You are listening to the Hire Fast podcast. On today's episode, I will be joined by Corey Masson, who will help me unpack and align inspiring stories of affirmations that shifted the overall culture in our restaurants. What are we after with the culture of care? To get engagement. Why? To improve productivity and increase profitability. We're also going to discuss the second cornerstone of care, the letter A, and what it stands for. All right, let's do this.
The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Hire Fast podcast, a podcast aimed at educating you on hiring the right person for the right job and keeping them. Are you sick of spending precious time and energy hiring and training people just to have them turn around and quit? Then join Alan and his guests on Hire Fast as they teach you how to skillfully motivate and attract rock star talent. Now here is your host, Alan Daviduk.
Hello, I want to thank you for listening to the Hire Fast podcast. I'm Alan Daviduk. This podcast is for all things attracting, hiring, recruiting, staffing, employee engagement, developing, retaining the best people, and creating what I call rock stars. So I'm here today with Corey Masson from the Smart System. Corey, how you doing, man?
Great day to you, man. I'm doing well. How about you?
Not too bad, not too bad. So I want to just recap some stuff from last week when we were here.
Awesome.
And I'm going to say this one just over and over, probably a few more times, because I really want the people at home to understand what the Smart System is.
Absolutely.
That it was a roadmap of how I got out of the prison that my family business was in because I couldn't keep people. And it was the steps that I achieved to attack the two things that I needed the most, employee engagement and employee retention. And SMART stands for skillfully motivate and attract rockstar talent. So last week we talked about connection, right? And what connection means, how we connect with people, how we, people are drawn to each other. The level of affinity that are, each person holds for each other, right? And we told some stories to kind of get people to understand what connection is and all the pieces of it and all the things we have to do all the time.
Yeah, the trust building between team members and leadership. So
today we're going to talk about affirmation. So affirmation is kind of it's different, right? It's an emotional one, right? It's a genuine, heartfelt expressions, right? So I think a lot of people think when you talk about affirmations, they talk about themselves, right? We say things to ourselves over and over and over again, right? I love myself, right? But it's also about other people, right? And affirming other people. That's what that expression of support is, and encouragement and appreciation.
Right.
That's what my definition of it is.
Yeah. I'll chime in really quick here. Affirmation, you just said something very important. It's something that someone does to themselves typically. And they're typically doing that because they're not receiving that at home, or it's not being modeled to them in their daily life. And affirmations in the workspace are those mantras that help motivate you, the team, and others ultimately to do a better job. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so you're switching the narrative, not asking someone to do it just for themselves, but you're asking them to do it for others.
Well, and I think what's very important about when you say it that way, right, mm-hmm. that we don't confuse it with recognition.
No.
Right? Because I think people confuse that. Hey, you sold, 10 things today, and I gave you a gift card, and I put up a note, Sally did a good job, right? That's recognition. That's not affirmation.
Absolutely. Just a really quick fact for you here, man. 45% of people nationwide, employees, state that affirmation is their preferred method of knowing they're doing a good job.
Oh.
Not through recognition, but through the other things.
Interesting.
Anyway.
I never would have thought that.
No, right? And it's less than one in, you wouldn't, but I would, because that's what I need to get on with my day. Keep going, man.
So, when I think of, the first thing that pops in my head when you talk about, affirmations, right, encouragement statements, I can picture myself in bed at 10 o'clock at night on a Saturday and watching Saturday Night Live. Remember that guy? What was his name? Stuart Smalley. And he would say, I'm good enough. I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. I used to laugh when watching that.
Well, I thought you were going to talk about Richard at the copier, because Richard in the copier space actually was giving everyone affirmations without realizing it. Keep going.
I just when I think affirmation, I see that guy in my head all the time, right? Denial. What does he say? Denial ain't just a river in Egypt. I love that guy. Anyway, some examples of affirmation, like that I use are things like when I'm dealing with the team and employees, doesn't even matter their age, right? Things like, hey man, you got this, right? Mm-hmm. When they feel like they're struggling with something, something like when I see them doing something good, hey man, you're getting better at this every day, right? That was amazing. Like, look, what you just did was amazing, right? That was awesome, right? Or your way to go. What you did was just a bomb, right? So just these little things over and over and over again, and I look for places to put them, right? To insert them all day long.
Well, I'm going to be transparent here because I am. On our way here, you called me. I was going through one of those lovely dead spots in New Hampshire, and you're like, should we print this up or should we do that? And I said, no, dude. You've already lived the harder experience, and we've already gone through what we're thinking about talking about today.
He did say that to me.
And I literally said, you've got this.
Yeah, he did say that. I was affirmed. I didn't even know it.
Right. Not necessarily recognition for doing a job, but it was affirming you know what you're doing.
Right on, right on. So, do you think, though, that when you talk about things like this, it makes a lot of people feel uncomfortable?
If the leadership doesn't know how to do it, the answer is yes. And especially if the employee is coming in and not getting it at home or is dealt with a really strict environment who basically wants and doesn't give support, absolutely.
I just have this vision in my head, right, of this guy with tattoos, like this gruff guy, and like and I sit there and say, "Listen, man, this is what you got to do. You gotta affirm people." And he looks at me like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah, he's like, "Is my name Sally?" Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I do have some other questions though for you. So there's things that in my mind I think are an affirmation, right? And I wanna tell you what they are and get in are they an affirmation or not, right? So because I think we always think it's one thing, but it could kind of be hidden in other things that we do too, right? That we do naturally. Mm-hmm. Like if you were talking to an employee, right, and you said, "Hey, listen, feel free to come talk to me at my office anytime." Right? Is that an affirmation?
That's an affirmation that you respect them, that you have a connection with them, which we talked about last episode, and that's not necessarily though describing an action of like, okay, you're instilling a value and a belief that to them, like, I know you can come talk to me at any point in time, but you're not affirming the conversation in between. Okay. There's a bit of gray area there, to be honest with you. To me, like, yes, you can come here and you come speak with me anytime. I'm affirming your voice can be heard. That's a strong suit of connection, but it's being reinforced through affirmation. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So you can't do one without the other.
Gotcha. So what if I said to someone, well, I got some good news and I got some bad news. Is that an affirmation?
Well, in the end, you're trusting someone to hear the good news and the bad news and knowing that they're going to have the tools equipped to handle that. So you're affirming that they're ready.
Okay.
Right? So again, you've got a connection that's been established, but you're affirming the ability of that connection, the ability to be honest, both good and bad. So you're affirming them that they're ready to hear you.
So if you had an employee or a team member that you gave them a task and they melted down over it, right? But you're trusting them.
Absolutely.
Right? So if you said to them, "Listen, I'm giving this task to you because I think you can do it."
Right.
I think you can kill it. That's an affirmation.
Yeah, it's giving the pitcher who just gave up a home run the ball back.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, I wanted
to... You believe in their skill. You believe in them.
Okay, understood.
And that's affirming, not recognizing them for the job they've done.
Well, you gave them the job because you believed that they could do it.
Yeah,
right?
That's affirming.
And I felt we should talk to those odd ones because I think people listening, I do that all the time. right? But do they, right? So I just wanted to kind of make sure there was a line there that they understood what is and what isn't, or they can, fill in the blanks themselves,
Yeah, it's all in the practice and that it's ultimately in the message. It's
Gotcha.
how it's being messaged. Go do this is one thing, or hey, I need your help in this, right? It's all in the orientation of the connection. If the connection is strong, and some we'll get to eventually in the environment is fostering the upselling of someone's ability, even if he or she doesn't have the skill, you have a connection. You're affirming them that they can get there. Like, I know you can get there. They may not have a understanding of their own self-worth.
Or they can figure it out?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep. So that's all of the purpose of affirmation.
Okay. I think that's much clearer. That last piece was much clearer for me. I don't know about you guys at home, but so remember when last week we were talking about my buddy Kendra that called me Mr. Allen when I helped her with stuff. So in between when I left Kendra and I went to the other side of the restaurant, I want to tell you another story, and let's see if this is an example of affirmation. So I walked around the corner and I saw this guy. His name was Antonio. Okay. What a cool cat this guy was, right? He was literally falling apart. He was at the sandwich station, and anybody that's in the Dunkin' Donut world knows that place can get pretty stressful. So he had stuff everywhere, and Dunkin' at the time had this new product. It was a burrito, like I don't know, it had rice or whatever in it, right? So it was this burrito, and they had it on like a sale for the grand opening. They were doing like 2 for something, right? So he was getting tons of them, and no one taught or trained him on what to do. So he was making one at a time. And what this was doing was really putting him in the weeds all the time. So he was very stressed out. He was dropping stuff on the floor. So I went over. I said, hey, man, my name's Alan. And you talk funny. I don't talk funny because I'm from Boston, right? So these guys are in the South. Right. And they all look at me funny. They're like, where are you from? Yeah. Every time I would have a conversation with someone. So I helped him. We got everything caught up. We cleaned everything up. We organized everything. I said, hey, man, listen, I've been working in sandwich station for a long time. You don't really know me. I said, let me show you a few things, right? Mm-hmm. So I reorganized everything, right? Mm-hmm. And most importantly, while we were reorganizing, I explained to Antonio why we were putting this here, right? Why that was going to go there, right? So, Antonio, when you're doing this is what you do, right? So I explained the why with it, which was I felt was super important to make him understand exactly why we were doing what we were doing. So then we made these burritos and we prepped a bunch, right? And I showed him. I said, "Watch this, man!" Right? An order came in. We went boom, 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 out.
Right.
1, 2, 3, out. Right? And he was like, you could see, right, in his eyes, he was getting this rhythm, right? And I was like, man, I believe in you. You can do this. I said, now I've set you up for success. You think you got this? He's like, I got this.
Right.
And I walked away, and he looked at me as I was walking away, and he said, man, I've been here for 2 years, and you taught me something in 1 hour that in 2 years I haven't learned.
Right. You said something very important at the very end there, like, you've got this, and like you helped increase productivity by teaching and also accepting where he was at that time, right? And which is, you didn't know he was been doing for 2 years.
Yeah, I had no idea.
I mean, let's call it out. If you went in, and that was your, I think you were there as a consultant at the time.
Yep.
And you went in and said, hey, you've been here for 2 years and this is how it's working. And you like shamed him. And, you would put him in a more vulnerable state than he already was to not accept your teaching. So, what you did was you didn't squander or deny his ability to take his gift of wanting to be there. Let's call it out. He wants to be there even when, the river is like overflowing for him, going back to denial, you actually grew engagement and like connection with him, by affirming his ability and saying like, you want to be here, you're actually, in the weeds, but you're still trying. Let me give you some tips and tricks because you've been there too.
Yeah.
And someone probably taught you, or better yet, let's call it out. He was part of an environment before. Like again, going back to Miss Kendra's story, his leader didn't lead by design, his leader by disengaging.
Right.
So you engaged, and then you affirmed his ability. But more importantly, he also did the harder part, and that's affirm you helped him, right? And so that was an affirmation on what you gave him. Again, he didn't actually panic in that moment. Again, you went ahead and you decreased the anxiety, which I like to say, and increased the calmness. which all happens between these two pillars of connection and affirmation.
So some of this stuff, and that's why CARE is an acronym and a framework, right? Because they all go together, right? They're all, and a couple of episodes ago, I talked about these being cornerstones, like of a building, right? And holding it up, right? And without one, falls over, right? So you got to have them all. So a lot of the things that we do, they all tie together, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, ultimately, team culture is transcended via motivation, and motivation happens because of these cornerstones coming together. It ultimately actually goes ahead and decreases the stress management for the leaders and, more importantly, the employees, so they can kick ass at customer delight.
So I want to tell you another story. I got this girl that works for us. Man, she's a rock star for sure. Her name's Kaylee. And Kaylee left an environment where, things weren't good, right? She came to us. She was very self-confident, was very quiet. And, because of our process and because we start from the beginning, asking questions, one thing that I wrote down was during her interview was she made a comment that kind of, like I put it in that little pocket of my brain, right? That I'm going to pull this one out later, right? And she made a comment that she loved photography.
Okay.
Right? She loved making videos and doing that marketing and that kind of stuff, right? So I was like, okay. So, we're going along with Kaylee. She's doing a great job, right? So I wanted to start doing some social media marketing. So I said, hey, Kaylee, what do you think about this, right? And she just, it was like the flower just blossomed, right? Like she perked up. All of a sudden, the quiet person talked, right? And the self-conscious person was outgoing, right? It was like just this shift in energy. So what we did is and who knew she had a $1,000 camera at home that she just ran home to get and came back, right?
Right.
So she's, been doing these classes where, she understood lighting and natural light versus it was crazy listening to her, right? I was like, whoa, it's just a picture of a donut, man. Let's make it look pretty, right? So she starts taking all these pictures, and I started leaning in, and I got her some equipment and a few different things, right? So what I did is she took all these pictures, these real sexy beauty shots of sandwiches and different products that we have in the store, right? Donuts and muffins and stuff, right? So I took a bunch of these photos and I had marketing signs made. And I remember her coming in that day. It was amazing, right? She comes walking in the front of the store, and I've got the signs like everywhere. Like I literally went on this I put snap frame holders outside at the drive-thru. So every customer, like the people sitting in line, they're staring at these, drooling at these pictures, right? In line while they're waiting. So they don't even know they're waiting anymore, right? Because they're like, man, I want a chicken salad sandwich. Like that's amazing, right? So she comes in and she starts crying when she sees, because these photographs became her babies.
Right.
She actually said it there. My babies are out here.
That's awesome.
And she now owns our social media marketing, and she does TikTok videos and all this crazy stuff, right? So, is that an affirmation, right? So I started by remembering something that she loved, right? And I hit the hot button. Right? And constantly over and over again, what I did is I set her up for success. I got her the tools she needed. I got her the resources she needed. Are those affirmations?
Well, the answer is yes. And all this happens because you had clear organizational goals that you established in the SMART system from the onset. And then I heard you say, during the interview process and what we call the fit test with SMART, you start to learn about the personality, the personal goals, the professional goals of the team members. Are they a good fit for our vision and where we're going, and how are they activating that? So in the end, you heard that, you pulled it out of your thought bank and brought it to her, which is affirming to her that she's being heard. If you cannot hear me, then you cannot see me, is this mantra. And if you can't hear me, then you're not going to see me. Then ultimately, why am I here? Am I just a pawn in the in the business?
So that's probably why when I leaned in, she shifted the energy.
Exactly. Yeah. You ultimately are also reaping a benefit from this with that shift of energy, because you're now helping her improve her own skills and proficiency. She's gaining more trust, and with the connection you guys have, which is going back to her now wanting to be retained. So these are all small pieces.
Engagement, retention.
Exactly.
Right? Productivity. We're after productivity.
Absolutely. Dude, the perspective of gratitude, damn, I'm lucky to be here, is powerful. She probably walked in feeling like she's happy to be here. Mm-hmm. And her being happy to be there, seeing her work being on display is infectious, which means that, the team members who are having a bad day, like, do I want to be that Debbie Downer, talking about Saturday Night Live, before, do you want to be that Debbie Downer, or do I want to be someone who's going to be getting on that train of success? I'm happy she's happy, so why am I not happy? And eventually the team will recognize that and help lift each other up through affirmation. Got it. Love it. So, one of the ideas for action I would give to the people that are listening is really it's really two simple words, but before I get there, 3 words come to mind, right? You got to be genuine, you got to be authentic, and you got to be real, right? So if you're not those things, then it doesn't matter what you say. People are going to think it's bullshit, right? Right. Yeah. In the end, Alan, it is bullshit if the business isn't going ahead and stewarding the values and the passion of the growth of the business through the team development. If the team isn't developing and able to understand what the business values are, then all those you should be, if you don't say thank you and share why we're here, that sense of purpose and value with your team, essentially they just think they're clocking in, clocking out, and you're going to clock in, clock out employee engagement, which sucks, which isn't growing the business or the culture. Well, there's the idea for action, right? Exactly. Say thank you. Yes. Right? It sounds so simple, right? It sounds like, that's too simple. We got to make it complicated, right? But it's that easy. Say thank you before. Say when people walk in. Say thank you when they're leaving. Yeah. Thank you for coming in today and kicking butt with us, right? Just thank you, right? But you got to be genuine. Yeah. Right? You got to be authentic. Introducing positive techniques goes a long way. Again, ultimately, in the end, her precious work is being on display. Going back to the prior story with Antonio, he didn't have the affirmation of he's doing a good job. He was basically probably looked at he's the blocker in success. Well, you gave him affirmation saying, I believe in you, let me train you, let me work with you, and let's do this together. So we're stirring the secret sauce, right? Care, your connection, affirmation, like a witch's brew. We're stirring the secret sauce for people, right? So we're gonna take up next week. What we're gonna talk about next week is the R, right, which is responsibility, and we're gonna have some awesome, great stories to share about responsibility and what that means. But again, why is this stuff important, man? Right? It's because the financial stakes are tremendous. When you don't have it, when you have disengagement, it costs you a ton of money. Right? What we just described was engagement. Look at what happened to Kaylee when she was engaged. It benefited the business. Absolutely. Right? And you can't build that team that you're after without it, right? So thank you, everybody. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you, Corey, for being here. You're welcome. If you'd like to learn more about the SMART system and the SMART system's continuous improvement framework and how we attract, develop, and retain great people, please reach out. I'll give you all my info here in a second. And remember that the leaders with the best employees win every single time. So if you haven't already click subscribe below or follow, please do so we can keep you up to date with how to hire fast. You can visit me at getsmartsystem.com. There's a form down the bottom to learn more. Please fill that out. You can email me at alan@getsmartsystem.com. You can call me at 1-888-3SMART-5. Ciao for now. We'll see you next week.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.